Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We're looking at some preseason risers and fallers as a result of the second full week of preseason action. And we'll start in Miami, where the biggest panic situation happened last week when the Dolphins decided to make Malcolm Brown their featured running back against Chicago. Smart move, Dolphins. Myles Gaskin comes back and looks much better against the Falcons. Lo and behold, he should be Miami's best running back. Now, they still gave first-team reps to Savon Ahmed and to Malcolm Brown, but Gaskin looked like the Gaskin of old. Now, granted, it was against Falcons backups, but he scored on the ground. He scored in the air. You see the projections here from Sportsline, where Gaskin is the 21st ranked running back in PPR. Guys, have you gone back to Gaskin as a high-end number two, not a high-end, a mid-tier number two running back?
How about a number 2 running back that I would take in round 5? That's how I feel about Myles Gaskin. And if you look at the first 2 drives, I hope he does, because I'd love to take him, because I'm not ready to take him in round 4 just yet. But I am encouraged by this. First 2 drives of the game for the Dolphins, Gaskin played 16 snaps, Ahmed played 4, Brown played 2. He was treated like the feature back in that preseason game, and even came back after the 3rd drive to finish out the first half in the 2-minute drill, and he was their 2-minute drill in practice last week. I like Gaskin a lot. I think he's a very safe number 2 fantasy running back.
This is more like preseason pogo stick than preseason riser. I had him 18th at running back, I think, before last week. I've got him 18th at running back now, and I'm pretty comfortable with him in round 4 in full PPR. I do think he's going to be not quite what he was last year in the 10 games, which was basically a number 1 running back, but he has that kind of upside.
And he's going about 55 overall based on his ADP. So, Dave, if the ADP holds, you get him in round 5. If you're drafting with Heath.
Right. If I'm drafting with you guys, I'm not getting him.
I think late round 4 is where I would consider it. It's not necessarily early round 4 pick, but I like him better than Miles Sanders, than Josh Jacobs.
Mike Davis?
Than Mike Davis in PPR for sure. Travis Etienne, those guys that are going in that same range. I think Myles Gaskin has a much higher ceiling. Like you said, Heath, what we saw last year was a number 1 running back for the Dolphins. Another Dolphin who's a riser is Jalen Waddle, with Will Fuller and Devontae Parker both missing time. Now, there's a report over the weekend from the Miami Herald that Will Fuller and Parker should be ready for the start of the season. Fuller going to miss week 1 because of the suspension, but both guys dealing with different injuries. Fuller, a foot problem. Parker's got an undisclosed injury, but we know that the Dolphins have certainly been careful with him during his tenure there. Waddle, as you see, based on the projections, is the 3rd Dolphins receiver. Well, I guess now he's the 2nd Dolphins receiver behind Fuller, ahead of Parker. Is Waddle just a clear choice, number 1 for you?
He's my clear number 1, and part of it's the fact that Fuller's missed so much time, but also it's just Jalen Waddle. We went into the NFL draft thinking this guy had the ability to be the best receiver in this draft. We just weren't sure he was quite ready. He's looked good early on, and they are finding ways to manufacture touches for him. And I like the fact that Jalen Waddle's dealt with some injuries throughout training camp, like Devontae Parker, like Will Fuller, but Jalen Waddle's been there at practice most days. He's there at practice dealing with something, fighting through something. And so I think he has even more upside than this. I've got him in the 32-ish range, up there with Antonio Brown and Jerry Jeudy.
All right, so you see here Waddle is behind Devontae Smith. He's obviously behind Jamar Chase. Dave, would it be a shock given what Chase is going through and what Smith has been dealing with? He's fighting his way through that knee injury.
Yeah.
Would it be a surprise if Waddle's the best rookie wide receiver this year?
No, it wouldn't be a surprise if he was the best rookie wide receiver. It would be a surprise if he was the first rookie wide receiver off the board in drafts.
Oh, he won't be, no.
I don't think he will. I'm looking at him in round 7, round 8, somewhere in that range. And this is good news, because Will Fuller is sliding, and I think if you get him at a decent value, round 9, round 10, if he's there, I think he's worth taking the chance on. We know what his upside is. I just wish he'd be able to develop that rhythm with Tua that Waddle's been able to do this summer.
And Parker, he could also still be in the mix. Obviously, he's the one that's played with Tua in the NFL the most, and he's got a hard time staying healthy through his career. But since the Brian Flores era, he's certainly been on the field more times than not. He could be the best value of this all. And if they're all hurt, Fuller and Parker, then don't forget about Mike Gesicki, who's had a very strong preseason and was very good last year when Preston Williams went out, and it was just Parker and Gesicki. So Tua leaning on Gesicki in the preseason as well. Probably the guy who's going to rise the most is Jets wide receiver Corey Davis. So, Heath, you ran a bunch of Twitter polls over the weekend. I'll give you a second to look those up. And the guys you were comparing Corey Davis to, I know Juju was in one of those polls. Jamar Chase might now be in consideration. Corey Davis is rising as fast as any receiver for good reason, probably rising too far. But no Elijah Moore Corey Davis has been the apple of Zach Wilson's eye. He's run 13 routes so far in the preseason, and Wilson has targeted him 10 of those 13 routes. So give us some of the Twitter polls that you've posted.
Yeah, first I thought foolishly that he'd be in the Curtis Samuel, Mike Williams range.
No.
And Corey Davis received almost 3 times the vote as either of those wide receivers. And so then I boosted him up a little bit, compared him to Antonio Brown and Jalen Waddle. I would take both those guys over Corey Davis. Again, Corey Davis won the poll with 43% of the vote. So that one more. We'll just get a little bit ridiculous. Corey Davis versus Juju Smith-Schuster and Kenny Golladay. And once again, Corey Davis won the poll. This morning, I had tweeted out talking about Ja'Marr Chase, and I said, some of you guys can probably go trade Corey Davis for Ja'Marr Chase right now. And I got a flurry of responses. I would much prefer Corey Davis over Ja'Marr Chase in redraft.
It's not looking at the upside, obviously, when you're making those trades. But I think, we had a great conversation on our podcast. You should listen to it wherever podcasts are available. Our Fantasy Football Today podcast with Adam Mazer as the host, about just how good Corey Davis may or may not be. Now, again, Elijah Moore has not played in these games, so that's something to factor in dealing with quadriceps injury. And Moore is a rankings faller, along with Will Fuller, talking about the Dolphins situation as well. But Corey Davis is the one that they targeted in free agency. Corey Davis is a established player. He had a very good season last year with the Titans in a contract year, proved himself. And maybe the rookie is realizing that he's a good player and can still be a good fantasy option. Now, don't go crazy. Don't take him over Juju and Kenny Golladay. Probably don't take him over Waddle and Antonio Brown. But that next group of guys, I think you can make a strong case that he is better than Mike Williams, better than Curtis Samuel, and in the mix to be a low-end number 3 fantasy receiver. So we'll see how high Corey Davis rises. Right now his ADP is about 120. I think you're going to see him go probably 2 rounds higher than that based on what we've seen so far in the preseason. Jerry Jeudy is rising mostly because Cortland Sutton not on the field. Now, we talked about this last week, that Sutton hoping to play in the preseason game before the start of the regular season. Dave, I know you've been Jeudy over Sutton for a while. Heath, I know you just made that change. But, Dave, how far is Jeudy now distancing himself from Sutton, or is it still close?
It's fairly close, but I'm starting to think about Jeudy as a guy who might be able to crack the top 24 among wide receivers. He's not quite there yet in my rankings, but I just look at last year and how open he got last year, and he only had a 58% catchable target rate from his quarterbacks. And we're expecting the quarterback play to be better this year. It looks like it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater, and that's a guy I think that he's already developed some chemistry with going back months. Before training camp even started, I believe they were working out together. He looks great out there on film too, Jamie. He's separating all the time. The Seahawks starting cornerbacks in that preseason game had their hands full with Jerry Jeudy. A more reliable quarterback behind a better offensive line in Denver is going to put this guy on the map as far as a number 2 fantasy receiver goes. I'm talking myself into him. Moving up the rankings, round 6 at the latest is where I think I would hope to get Jeudy then. If I can get him after round 6, I'm going to be a happy camper. I just don't think I will.
I mean, you could see Jeudy maybe move ahead of Ja'Marr Chase based on what we're talking about with Chase and how he's falling. So Judy's on the rise, but again, we saw this and keep this in mind with Ja'Marr Chase, a hyped up rookie that struggled a little bit with drops and, came back year 2 and looking like a lot better option. But we'll see when Sutton's on the field how that determines things. And again, the quarterback situation, we hope to get an answer from Vic Fangio if it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater or going to be Drew Lock. A couple receivers also on the rise, Jacoby Myers and Mikal Hardman. Heath, which of those 2 guys do you like better? Myers has been, by all accounts, the best receiver for the Patriots, had a strong preseason game against Philadelphia. Hardman had a great preseason game from a target perspective, 8 targets without Tyreek Hill on the field, though. We know that's always been when he's popped is when Tyreek Hill has been off the field. Which receiver do you like better? Who would you draft first? Jacoby Myers, Hardman.
I'm still taking Hardman first solely because of upside. I think these are number 3 or number 4 wide receivers, and Jacoby Myers, if you want to place a bet who's going to score more PPR points, you should probably bet on Jacoby Myers. But I don't think he has the type of upside that you can see from Hardman, even if Tyreek Hill stays healthy. They threw 117 passes last year to Hardman and Sammy Watkins. We just need him to absorb that Watkins role, do what he's done. On 103 career targets, he's over 1,000 yards and he scored 10 touchdowns. And then if something happened to Tyreek Hill, he might be a top 12 wide receiver. So I'm drafting Hardman first, but he and Myers are pretty close in that low-end, borderline number 3 wide receiver range.
It's so interesting because he had a ridiculous catch from Chad Henne, and Mahomes missed him.
Yep.
Yes.
So he could have had 2 touchdowns in the game. But if you were to say, what's going to be more realistic? You catch a crazy pass from Chad Henne for a touchdown, or Mahomes misses you when you're wide open? I think most people would say Mahomes probably not going to miss him very much if he's wide open. One of my favorite Mikal Hardman stats is Sammy Watkins basically averaged 6 targets per game during his time with the Chiefs in the regular season. Hardman has 6 games in his career with at least 6 targets. In those 6 games, he's averaging over 14 PPR points per game. So you see what the upside could be. Only caught 4 of those 8 targets, but again, that was from both quarterbacks with Mahomes and Chad Henne playing in that game. All right, there's your risers. Just to recap, Gaskin, Waddle, Davis, Jeudy, Myers, Hardman. The negative, we'll start now, with Michael Carter, who, by all accounts, should be the best Jets running back this season. Had the best stat line in their game against the Packers. It was against the backups. But the worst part about this is he was playing behind not just one running back, but behind two running backs in Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman. Coleman making his preseason debut. So we heard all throughout the start of training camp, Michael Carter is the one. And then the first preseason game, he wasn't the one. And the second preseason game, he wasn't the two. So this is bad news for people that have already bought into Michael Carter as a potential starting running back so far, right, Dave?
It is, but I still like him the best of the 3 or 4 in this case, and I'm still taking him round 8 for sure, late round 7 if I really need a running back.
But he was going in round 6. I mean, that's where he was being drafted.
It's too soon at this point because he's going to share. He's done nothing wrong. He's on a team that's got some other running backs who actually look pretty good. And so the coaches made a decision to put him basically with the second team offense and not even mix him in with the starters in their preseason game against Packers backups. I'd like to see what happens in the third preseason game because in the first preseason game, he was the first guy up.
I hope so. I mean, it's just, the coaching staff coming from San Francisco, at least in terms of Mike LaFleur, the offense coordinator there. So we know the 49ers like to rotate their running backs. They know Tevin Coleman, this staff, because he was with them in San Francisco last year. Ty Johnson came in last season, did some nice things once they decided to sort of showcase LaMichael Pirine and Ty Johnson when they were done with Frank Gore. We'll see what happens with Carter. But again, long-term play, Carter is your guy. Short-term play, Carter is nothing more than a fantasy reserve at this point. You cannot draft him to be a starter, maybe not even a flex option to open the season. Hopefully, though, talent wins out, and I think he is the most talented Jets running back. J.K. Dobbins, I think this is just me dropping him because I think you guys had him probably at a more respectable place in terms of where he should be going. I was a little bit more optimistic about Dobbins. And this really isn't a preseason thing. This is just more looking at how good Gus Edwards continues to be and how much more they continue to use Gus Edwards. And the ADP between these two guys is absolutely ludicrous. Dobbins is at 30 as the 15th running back off the board. Edwards is the 44th running back off the board. There's no way there should be that gap, certainly in non-PPR. I hope to see Dobbins more involved in the passing game, but this is going to be close to a 50-50 split. Dave, you brought this up on the podcast. It was basically a 60-40 split last season with how these guys were used. And so you see what the rankings here based on the projections, 17th running back for Dobbins, 51st running back for Edwards. You should draft Dobbins first. That goes without saying. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. But Edwards is one of the best values that you will find if he's going 30 some odd picks, or excuse me, 25 some odd picks later at the running back position than where Dobbins is going. So keep an eye on Gus Edwards. He's going to be somebody I think that rises. Dobbins will fall a little bit, but hard to say J.K. Dobbins, especially in PPR, can be a top 12 running back. I still think top 15 is within the realm of possibility, especially if he is more involved in the passing game, but a little hard to trust J.K. Dobbins right now, especially I had him closer to the beginning of round 3. He should go in the round 4 range for PPR. Another running back that's falling is James Conner. So Chase Edmonds played in the first preseason game for the Cardinals. Conner was out when he was on the reserve COVID-19 list. Conner comes off, did not play a lot of snaps. Dave, is it clear that Chase Edmonds is the running back you should draft even in non-PPR?
Even in non-PPR, I think he's the better fit for the Arizona offense. They look like a team that's ready to throw the ball 650 times this year. Lean totally on Kyler Murray and just throw short passes all the way around. Conner can catch, but Edmonds is clearly more explosive. He started the second preseason game. There were times where both of them were on the field. Conner really didn't have any redeeming value in the game. He wasn't good in pass protection, wasn't explosive. We know he's a physical running back. Who knows how long he'll be able to hold up for. This is somebody that I'm not excited to take, whereas at one point this preseason I was excited to take him in those middle rounds. Now I'm not, and I'm more excited to take Chase, especially in PPR leagues.
I think it was easy PPR. Non-PPR I think is the tougher one because if Conner comes in and plays the Kenyon Drake role, that was a double-digit touchdown role last year, and Chase does not seem to be a guy that they trust in those situations, at least as of now.
It's true.
Heath, where do you come out on it non-PPR?
Yeah, I think
half PPR
Connor's a better value in all of them. I think Connor's a better draft value in all of them. I'm not as convinced that Chase Edmonds is going to have a considerably bigger role than he did last year, and I get confused about the whole passing thing because he's not been very good in terms of yards per target or even yards per catch as a pass catcher. James Conner's actually been better in his career than Edmonds, so I'm not certain that they're never going to throw the ball to James Conner. I think he could see 40 targets like Kenyon Drake did and the goal line work. I still think it's more like 55-45 that Edmonds will be better than James Conner, and Conner's being drafted quite a bit later in round 8.
And I just want to make something clear. We see this a few times. There's two backfields in particular. Buffalo was one, the Cardinals were another, where the potential better running back, I don't think that's necessarily the case here or in Buffalo, but the better running back played the fewest snaps, potentially, coming back from injury situations. Zach Moss was coming back from missing time with the hamstring injury.
This week in the preseason.
And Connor coming back from missing time due to the reserve COVID list. That could play into the snap counts here. So I don't think you should read too much into it for those particular backfields. But Edmonds in PPR should be drafted ahead of Connor. I think it's closer in non-PPR. And to your point, Heath, it would not be surprising if Connor is much better than we're at least anticipating right now, just given the fact he could play that Kenyon Drake role. A couple other fallers. We talked about Jamar Chase, a guy we put on this list just based on the preseason performance. This was before the report came out this morning about him losing snaps to Auden Tate. And Mike Williams, another guy that's falling simply because he's not on the field, still dealing with that injury. Hopefully he will be healthy, but Mike Williams losing potentially a little bit of what his outlook could be with Josh Palmer playing well in the preseason, Jalen Guyton playing well in the preseason. You know Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler are going to get those targets, but Mike Williams could fall to a spot where his draft value is even better, however, falling a little bit as a result of not being on the field.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.